Assalamu alaikum, wa rahmatullah, dear religious brothers and sisters. I am sure you have heard the rumor that if the Earth were 1 centimeter closer to the Sun, it would burn, or if it were 1 centimeter further away, it would freeze. In fact, this claim is completely unfounded because the Earth is already moving 5 million kilometers away from the Sun in a year due to its elliptical orbit. So this popular rumor is not true. But if you like, I can tell you something much more interesting than that. There are values in the universe we are in that are determined by such precise measurements that if they were to change not even by 1 centimeter, but by 1 trillion times 1 centimeter, there would be no life anywhere in the universe, not just on Earth. In physics, there are 4 fundamental forces: gravitational force, electromagnetic force, weak nuclear force, and strong nuclear force. All matter in the universe has been sustained by these laws of physics and constants for 13.8 billion years since the birth of the universe, which we call the Big Bang. The constants of physics are the constant values of the speed or strength of the laws of physics operating in the universe, which we already know. But the first point that surprised us was that in the second half of the 20th century, in the 1970s for the first time, physicists began to ask and investigate the question of what is the probability of the formation of chemistry that can form complex systems, that is, that can create life. And this research was almost a breaking point because the physicists who investigated this question realized that the probability of the formation of chemistry that can form complex systems is at scales that are too low for us to predict. They realized that the laws and constants of physics are in an extremely finely tuned balance. That's why they called it the fine-tuning argument, and it was written for the first time in the form of scientific papers by Martin Rees, one of the most famous astrophysicists in the UK, and it was accepted and published in world-renowned science journals such as Nature. And it made a lot of noise in the world of science because with this research we realized that if the laws of physics in the universe did not exist or were not in their current constants, life could never form anywhere in the universe. Let's examine this a little more closely with examples. For example, there is a force called gravity in the universe, meaning that everything with mass bends space-time and pulls matter towards itself. If this gravitational force did not exist, hydrogen and helium could not come together, and stars could not form. Without stars, heavy metals such as carbon, calcium, iron, and planets could not form. There would be no elements and no chemistry. Anyway, no chemistry means, of course, no life. So without gravity, there would be no life. Let's look at the electromagnetic force. The electromagnetic force is the magnetic force that allows atoms to form, that allows electrons to revolve around protons. If this electromagnetic force did not exist, atoms could not form. There would be no chemical bonds, no light, and therefore no life. This also applies to the strong nuclear force, because the strong nuclear force is the force that holds together the protons, neutrons, and even the quarks inside the protons that make up the atom. If it were not for the strong nuclear force, no atom other than hydrogen could be formed and life could not exist. Or without the weak nuclear force, because it governs radioactive decay in the nuclei of atoms, stars could not burn their fuel, heavy elements could not form, chemistry could not form, light could not form, and therefore there would be no life in the universe. In other words, each of these forces must be present for life to exist. More interestingly, it is not enough to have these forces. These forces must also be finely tuned. For example, if the gravitational constant decreased by 1 in 10 over 60, that is, if a number of 60 zeros behind 1 decreased by only 1 unit, no planet larger than a soccer ball could form in the universe. If the gravitational constant were to increase by 10 to the 60th power of 1, there would be large planets, but there would be no living beings on those planets because they would immediately collapse inward from the force of gravity. But it is so finely tuned that it seems impossible to attribute it to coincidence. In fact, philosopher Robin Collins describes the impossibility of it being a coincidence with the following analogy. 1. Place a coin anywhere in the universe and shoot it in a random direction, and the bullet will keep going and going without losing momentum, and the probability of you hitting that coin at the edge of the universe is higher than the probability of gravitation occurring by chance at that value. Let's look at the cosmological constant. If the cosmological constant, which is the expansion rate of the universe, were to increase by 1 in 10 over 120, we are talking about a number with 120 zeros behind it. So to understand how high this number is, you can compare it with 10 over 20, which is the number of seconds that have elapsed since the beginning of time. If this cosmological constant increased by 10 over 120 to 1, the universe would be scattered all over the place, and therefore neither matter, nor stars, nor elements, nor life could form. Or if the cosmological constant decreased by 10 to 120 to 1, then the universe would collapse in on itself, and again neither atoms nor stars could form, and therefore neither life could exist. Let's imagine a scale divided into units as small as a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a centimeter, and its length is the width of space, that is, 93 billion light years. Life cannot exist anywhere else, and we see that for some reason the value of the cosmological constant has been brought exactly there. Let's give an example of the fine-tuning of the initial entropy of the universe. According to Professor Roger Penrose, an Oxford physicist, the distribution of mass and energy that would allow life to exist is 110 over 10 over 123. Look, this is the highest number ever seen in the history of physics. It is even impossible to write this number because there are more zeros in this number than the number of particles in the entire universe. So if we add up all the protons, electrons, and neutrons in the universe, we still cannot reach this number because the total number of particles in the universe is 10 over 87. So even if we write 0 on each electron, proton, and neutron in the universe, we still cannot write this number. But we see that even if the initial entropy of the universe differed by 1 part in 10 over 10 over 10 over 123, life would not be able to exist. But it has been adjusted exactly at those values and made suitable for the existence of life. This is the fine-tuning of the existence and constants of the laws of physics. It is too extraordinary to be attributed to coincidence, because in a situation where probabilities are selected for a specific purpose among high probabilities, the most logical thing is to look for a consciousness behind it. For example, if a person wins the national lottery 50 billion times in a row, would we call it a coincidence, or would we look for a consciousness behind it, which is much more likely to happen in this example? In other words, even if you say 1 in a billion, 1 in a billion, 1 in a billion, 1 in a billion, 1 in a billion for an hour without interruption, we are still talking about a fine-tuning that you cannot reach its numerical value. Of course, after this discovery in physics, many scientists accepted this fine-tuning as a signature of the creator of the universe, and this discovery in the world of science led many atheist scientists to accept the creator. Many atheist physicists, even non-believers, have admitted that the most plausible interpretation is that it is not a coincidence but a design orchestrated by divine power. Frank Tipler, mathematical physicist. 20 years ago, when I started my career as a cosmologist, I was an atheist. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that one day I would write a book showing that the central claim of Judeo-Christian theology is in fact true, that it is a direct consequence of the laws of physics as we understand them. I reached these conclusions using the relentless logic of my particular branch of physics. Antony Flew, philosopher. I must emphasize that my discovery of God developed on a purely natural level, without any relation to phenomena. In short, my discovery of God is a journey of reason, not of faith. The only satisfactory explanation for the origin of the life we observe on Earth is the existence of an infinitely intelligent mind. Fred Hoyle, astronomer. I do not believe that any scientist who has examined this evidence would have any difficulty in concluding that the laws of nuclear physics, in terms of the results they produce inside the stars, are designed for a purpose. End. So do you think we got lucky? Or is all this fine-tuning of the universe the result of coincidence? I don't think we need to fool ourselves. Instead, it is most reasonable and logical to recognize Allah who wants to introduce himself to us through this book, the universe. Salamun alaikum.